My wife asked for a divorce on WhatsApp while I was at war. Days later, the FBI knocked on her door. Kandahar was quiet in a way that always felt unnatural to Sergeant Nathan Briggs. The silence of the base didn't bring peace. It was just the breath before the next shot, the stillness before the next explosion. Inside the command post, dim lights cast long shadows on concrete walls. Nathan sat alone, elbows resting on a metal table, fingers tapping against the cool surface, counting seconds without realizing. Outside, the dusty night wrapped the base like a thick blanket. Engines hummed in the distance. Somewhere, laughter from a younger group of soldiers echoed faintly. Nathan ignored it. His focus was on the flickering screen of his battered iPhone, cracked at the corner from a drop months ago in Jalrez Valley. Then the message came. A quiet vibration, no more than a breath on the table. He looked down. WhatsApp. From Becky. His heart rose to his throat. Becky never messaged during deployment. That was the unspoken rule. Letters, maybe emails, but rarely anything immediate. Not unless it was an emergency. The message preview was chilling in its brevity. Oi Nathan. Neo queria phaser iso por aqui. Masse melhor, duque dixer pra depois. Pedio divorcio. Já está morando como Jeremy agora. A casa vai ser vendida logo. Suidade tiai. He blinked. Then read it again. The silence deepened, turned heavy. He tapped on the notification. But the chat was already gone. Blocked. It didn't register fully. His thumb hovered over the screen like it had forgotten its purpose. The message had arrived, detonated quietly in his chest, and left him sitting there, stunned. Jeremy? Who the hell was Jeremy? His breathing became shallow. He set the phone down carefully, as if it might bite him. Around him, the world kept turning, distant boots on gravel, the faint whine of a generator, a call on the radio. Everything normal. Except it wasn't. His hand trembled slightly as he picked the phone up again and opened their joint banking app. He hadn't looked in weeks. Rebecca had always handled that. The numbers didn't make sense. He checked again. Then again. $88,500. Gone. No record of major expenses. Just vanished. He checked the mortgage app. The loan balance had changed, more than it should have. Refinanced? How? He ran a hand over his short-cropped hair, mind racing. Nathan stood up abruptly, nearly knocking over the chair. Sergeant Briggs, you good? The voice belonged to Private Vasquez, standing near the entrance with a clipboard. Nathan gave a tight nod. Fine. Just needed air. But he didn't step outside. Instead, he moved to his bunk, sat, and opened his encrypted military laptop. He composed a message to James Cole, former JAG officer, now independent military lawyer, and someone Nathan had once pulled out of a firefight in Helmand. Need you to check something. Urgent. Becky might have forged my signature to refinance the house. Need asset trace. And find out who Jeremy Ryan is. He hesitated, then added. They're trying to sell the house while I'm deployed. Send. Nathan leaned back, breathing through his nose. He looked at the ceiling. A flickering fluorescent bulb hummed above. This couldn't be real. But it was. He tapped through his emails. The realtor notifications weren't there. No messages about a sale. But then again, Becky had access to all the settings. He remembered the day they bought that house. Small place in Spokane. White picket fence. A maple tree in the yard. It wasn't much, but it was theirs. Or at least, it had been. Now, someone else was living in it. Jeremy. Nathan's chest tightened. Not with sadness. Yet, but with that cold focus he used in combat. The one that let him think under pressure, act without hesitation. This wasn't just betrayal. It was theft. Deception. A kind of ambush you couldn't shoot your way out of. His phone buzzed again. Not Becky this time. James replied. Already on it. I'll pull records on the refinancing and check title status. If your signature was forged, we've got a felony. I'll loop in a contact from DOJ if needed. Hang tight. Nathan looked down at his hands. Steady now. Discipline. That was his anchor. He would not lash out. He would not respond emotionally. That was what they wanted, or at least expected. He would gather, analyze, strike, but only when ready. A shadow passed over the window. Vasquez again, probably doing his rounds. Nathan didn't care. He was already elsewhere in his mind. Spokane. His front porch. The couch Becky used to fall asleep on. And a stranger in that space. He reached under his bunk and opened the small safe. Inside was a thumb drive. Backup files, ID scans, insurance policies. All digital breadcrumbs. He added the WhatsApp screenshot, labeled the folder Operation Homefront. A name like a joke, but nothing about this was funny. This was war, a different kind. And Nathan Briggs had been trained to win those too. Nathan woke before the sun. Kandahar's pale dawn crept across the horizon, painting the tents and bunkers with thin light. His boots hit the dirt before the others stirred. He needed time alone to think, to plot the angles like a battle plan. Every problem had a pattern, and every betrayal had a beginning. James had sent a second email just after midnight. The house was refinanced 2 months ago. Signature doesn't match yours. They used a remote notary service, shady as hell. Jeremy Ryan is listed as cohabitant on a utilities transfer request. Also found a sale listing dated last week. Open house scheduled for Sunday. Nathan read the lines 3 times. The signature had been forged. His name used to pull $330,000 from the equity of the house, his house, while he served 7,000 miles away under military contract. Jeremy Ryan. The name sounded like rusted metal in Nathan's throat. He ran a background check. James sent back the file. Jeremy had 2 misdemeanor fraud charges. One dropped, the other dismissed after a clerical error. Nothing stuck, but it was there, like a crack beneath paint. Nathan spent the morning in a corner of the base's comms room, using his secure access to collect everything he could. Tax records, property records, bank logs. He built a timeline. For days after his last deployment began, Becky stopped responding to his emails. 2 weeks later, she filed a change of address with USPS. 3 weeks after that, Jeremy's name started appearing in public records tied to his property. The betrayal had moved fast. Efficient. Ruthless. But what chilled Nathan more wasn't the timing. It was the precision. This wasn't just a love affair gone wrong. This was targeted. Calculated. He began mapping phone calls. Using data James scraped from his legal access, Nathan saw patterns in Becky's call history. 2 burner numbers tied to other spouses of deployed soldiers. Jeremy had been around. Before him, there were others. This was a con. Nathan leaned back in his chair, the plastic creaking. He stared at the wall, where a map of the region showed red dots and unit paths. The map of his own life was suddenly messier, more dangerous than anything outside the wire. He reached for his phone again. This time, he accessed the home's smart system. He had installed cameras years ago, paranoid about theft while on deployment. Becky had disconnected most, but not all. The garage camera still pinged once a day. Quietly. Low bandwidth. Not enough to stream, but enough to store. He tapped into the feed. Recent uploads. There. A figure, blonde, tall, late 30s. Carrying boxes into his garage. Jeremy. And in the background, Becky's voice. He downloaded the footage. Saved it. Sent it to James with one line. He lives there. I want this admissible. The reply came seconds later. Building the case. Let me talk to DOJ Fraud Division. This isn't just civil anymore. Nathan's jaw clenched. He closed the laptop. The path was clear. This was his mission now, and he would not fail. Back in the barracks, the news spread quickly. Not about Becky or Jeremy. Nathan didn't share that. But about how he was suddenly spending his nights deep in legal documents and audio files. He wasn't sleeping much. He didn't need to. Cole kept feeding him. Mortgage statements. Transfer logs. Text messages between Becky and Jeremy pulled from synced cloud data. She had forgotten to revoke permissions. A rookie mistake. In one message, Jeremy wrote, "You said he wouldn't notice till you sold it." Becky responded, "He's too busy playing soldier. We'll be done before he's back." Nathan read those lines over and over, each word burning like acid in his chest. No anger, just fire. Clean and focused. He started logging everything. He kept a journal with dates, quotes, and screenshots. He printed hard copies, filed them in triplicate. One for James, one for the FBI, if it came to that, one for him, to remind himself this was real. Jeremy's past kept unraveling. James found sealed records, expunged juvenile crimes, suspected identity theft in Tacoma, a lawsuit from a military widow in Texas that mysteriously disappeared. The pattern was clear. He preyed on military spouses. Lonely, vulnerable, with access to secure assets and power of attorney over husbands overseas. But Becky had volunteered. That was the part Nathan kept circling. She hadn't been duped. She had chosen this. Maybe it was love. Maybe it was greed. Maybe she'd just snapped. But she wasn't innocent. Not anymore. Cole had a plan. You keep quiet. Don't contact her. Don't tip him off. Let me build this like we're prosecuting a cartel. Nathan agreed. No contact. No rage texts. No revenge posts. Just data. Just facts. He contacted the credit bureaus, flagged identity fraud, froze his accounts. Jeremy had tried to open a new line of credit using Nathan's name. Denied. The chessboard was set. Now it was time to let them move. The first time Nathan watched Jeremy and Becky in the kitchen, it was like an out-of-body experience. Through the hidden feed from the oven cam, never disabled, he saw them dancing, laughing, sharing a bottle of wine Nathan had bought 3 Christmases ago. His name was still on the deed. Still on the fridge, for that matter. A magnet from Fort Bragg held up a faded photo of him and Becky at Niagara Falls. Jeremy ripped it down without looking, threw it in the trash. Nathan watched it all with surgical detachment. He couldn't afford emotion now. James had moved fast. He brought in an old contact in the FBI's Financial Crimes Division, an agent named Harper, short and wiry, but sharp as broken glass. She reviewed the file in one afternoon and requested more. This is organized. This is serial. You're not the only one. James forwarded Harper 2 other similar cases, soldiers who returned to find homes sold, accounts drained, spouses gone off the grid. All involving Jeremy. All within the last 6 years. The FBI was in. Nathan prepared statements, testimonies, his military record, deployments, confirmed absences during the forgeries. It all checked out. But there was a catch. To prosecute, they had to catch Jeremy in the act, preferably during a fraudulent transaction. So they set a trap. Nathan remotely accessed the real estate account. He flagged the Spokane house as under dispute. He removed power of attorney access granted by Becky in his name. Quietly, Cole sent letters to the brokerage firm. But it was the cameras that mattered. One Sunday morning, Nathan saw Jeremy open the garage. He loaded boxes into a realtor's SUV. The tag matched Daniel Spencer, licensed in Washington, known for fast flips, and on James's radar. Nathan downloaded the feed, time-stamped, location verified. Harper smiled when she saw it. Let's catch them red-handed. The call came in just after 2 a.m. Kandahar time. Nathan was already awake, sitting on the edge of his cot, boots on, fingers interlocked as if praying. The screen lit up with James's name. They're doing it, James said without preamble. Daniel Spencer scheduled a private showing this morning. Becky will be there. Jeremy, too. Nathan closed his eyes for a beat. Do they know you flagged the title? Nathan didn't open it at first. He let it sit on his kitchen counter for 3 days. The envelope sat beside his utility bill and a half-drunk cup of coffee, just another piece of debris in the quiet aftermath of war. When he finally tore it open, it began not with an apology, but a justification. I didn't know what Jeremy was capable of, she wrote. He told me Nathan had given up on our marriage, that he was signing over the house because he had a new woman overseas. That's why I believed the paperwork. Nathan paused. He closed the file and stared at the wall, then opened it again. Page 2 was colder. It detailed transactions, how Jeremy coached her to log in to Nathan's military pay account, how they withdrew the $88,500 in slow increments to avoid flags, how she forged signatures after watching hours of tutorial videos. He said it wasn't real fraud if Nathan wasn't going to use the money anyway. By page 4, her tone shifted. The language broke. Sentences fragmented. I didn't think it would go this far. I thought we'd start over. I thought it was okay to take back a life I didn't choose. Nathan stopped again. That line hit him in the sternum. Not because it hurt, but because it rang so clearly of Becky's voice. The Becky who had spent years resenting deployments, holidays missed, the unpredictability of life tied to someone always 1 foot out the door. She hadn't wanted Nathan gone. She'd wanted a life without war. Jeremy had just been the first person to offer her one. The final page bore her confession in plain terms. I admit to participating in financial fraud. I accept restitution terms. I relinquish claim to the Briggs estate and all jointly held property. It was notarized, witnessed, legally binding. Nathan scanned it into his records. Then, without fanfare, shredded the paper copy. She would face her consequences. And he would rebuild, without illusion. The investigation widened. Nathan found himself not just a victim, but a central witness. The FBI asked him to testify before a federal inquiry, not in a courtroom, but in a private session with 2 agents, a recorder, and a mountain of case files. Agent Harper met him at the federal building in Spokane. She offered no small talk, just a seat, water, and a folder labeled Ryan Schemes, Victim Index. "This is bigger than we thought," she said. 11 families, all with similar patterns. Wives or partners approached while husbands deployed. Same tactics, same language. Jeremy used military terms to sound legitimate. He preyed on the same weakness every time. Nathan flipped through the folder. He saw familiar faces, names from bases he'd served on, families he remembered from cookouts and base housing. Now victims, scattered, disillusioned. One woman had attempted suicide after discovering her life savings were gone. Another had to pull her kids out of school when their home was seized. Harper continued. He's being charged with federal conspiracy, identity fraud, and exploitation of active duty service members. Daniel Spencer is cooperating. Becky too, in exchange for a reduced sentence. Nathan didn't ask how reduced. It no longer mattered. "I'll testify," he said simply. The interview took 2 hours. He detailed everything, from the WhatsApp message to the forged refinancing. They recorded it all. At the end, Harper handed him a card. "If you ever want to speak to the others, there's a support group forming. Online. You're not alone, Briggs." He nodded, but didn't take the card. Aloneness wasn't the problem. Trust was. Months passed. The house was auctioned. The proceeds held in escrow, pending restitution. Nathan moved into a small rental near Fairchild Air Force Base. Not because he was rejoining, but because it felt safer to be near something familiar. He spent his mornings running, afternoons helping a veterans nonprofit, mostly logistics, planning, background checks on new hires. The work was steady, quiet, clean. One day, James called again. "You were right not to respond to her after the confession. She tried reaching out to the prosecutor last week. Wants to clarify her role." Nathan sighed. "She wants to rewrite the ending." "She can't," James said. "The case is sealed. The federal board is moving forward with a new category for these crimes. Targeted exploitation of deployed personnel. Your case set the precedent." Nathan didn't say anything. The word precedent landed strangely. Heavy, but not painful. Later that night, he opened the file labeled Case Archive on his computer. Inside were all the pieces, screenshots, court orders, photos, confession scans. He moved them to a new folder. He named it Resolved. He didn't delete it, just filed it away. And in the morning, when the sky turned that military blue, he ran 5 miles along the same route. 1 foot after the other. Not to forget, but because movement was its own kind of justice. The federal courtroom wasn't large. No gallery, no reporters. Just a handful of folding chairs, a judge, 2 attorneys, and 3 defendants in orange jumpsuits. Nathan sat in the back, not because he was forced to, but because that's where you sit when you've learned that attention is not victory. James stood beside him, hands in his pockets, as calm as ever. "They're not fighting it," James whispered. "Not anymore." Jeremy sat closest to the bench. He looked smaller than Nathan remembered. Thinner, eyes sunken. Daniel Spencer beside him, clean-shaven, already halfway into the image of a man trying to rebuild his cooperation into redemption. Becky was last. Her hair was tied back, her face pale. She didn't look at Nathan. She never did. The judge read through the charges, count by count. Fraud, forgery, conspiracy, misuse of government systems, financial exploitation of federal personnel during active service. The last one was new. It bore Nathan's name in the legislative notes. The pleas were entered, guilty, all of them. No theatrics, no last-minute objections. Then the judge read the sentencing recommendations. Jeremy, 12 years, federal. Daniel, 5, with parole in 3 for cooperation. Becky, 2 years, reduced from 5, with full restitution and public statement. Nathan exhaled once. Slowly. Not relief. Something else. The absence of anticipation. He stood when they called him forward for a closing statement. Not required, but offered. He didn't prepare notes. Didn't need them. He looked at the judge. "I served 22 years in uniform. I've led men into combat, carried the weight of their loss, and returned to a country that says it values sacrifice. What happened to me wasn't just betrayal, it was strategy. This wasn't a mistake. It was a system designed to gut us while we're deployed, while we're focused on staying alive." He paused, looked at the defendants. Let them serve their time. Let them return changed. I don't need revenge. I need it on record. We are not soft targets. Not anymore. The judge nodded. Duly noted. As Nathan returned to his seat, Becky's eyes finally met his. She didn't speak. He didn't blink. Silence, for once, was enough. Spring came late to Spokane. Nathan found himself on the porch of his new rental one morning, watching frost recede from the grass like an army pulling back after a long siege. The world was quiet. No more alerts, no more midnight messages. His phone stayed face down more often than not. One morning, a package arrived. Inside was a framed certificate, Department of Defense recognition for exposing fraudulent activity targeting military families. There was a letter signed by a general he'd met once, long ago in Kandahar. Nathan didn't hang it. He left it in the box. Instead, he put on his boots and went outside. Across the street, a boy was learning to ride a bike, his father holding the seat, jogging behind him. The image struck Nathan harder than it should have. He turned and walked toward the park. Every day, he added another block to his route. Not training, not preparation, just living. At the edge of the park, he found a veteran's bench facing the street. He sat, closed his eyes. No memories rushed in. No flashbacks. Just the weight of everything he had carried. And what he had finally put down. Behind him, his phone buzzed once, an update from James. The federal task force had opened new cases. More families saved. Systems reinforced. A new bill proposed in Congress. Nathan didn't check the message right away. Instead, he looked up at the open sky. A man betrayed. A soldier wronged. But more than that, a survivor with proof. And a life left to live. Thank you so much for listening. Subscribe to the channel, give it a like, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss our upcoming stories. Drop a comment and let us know where you're watching from today. Big hug, and see you in the next episode.